12:30. So just gonna continue to give another minute or so for people that might be joining in the next minute or so. But we'll just sort of go ahead and kick us off. Thanks to everyone for being here, whether you're participating on the panel or just listening in as you're able in the middle of your busy day. My name is Hannah Green. I work at Educate Maine with our Maine Career Catalyst program. I'm here to support the webinar today. So this session, the Green and Blue Career session, is the first webinar of our Spring Exploring Maine Industries webinar series. The series is a recent collaboration between the career offices at Southern Maine Community College, the University of Southern Maine, and Educate Maine's Maine Career Catalyst program, with the goal of supporting students' career exploration and understanding of the world of work, whether you are a career changer or coming into post-secondary education right out of high school, and everything in between. Each moderated discussion of this series features a different Maine industry and a panel of experts, including employers, professional associations, industry advocates, or working professionals within a particular field. The Exploring Maine Industries webinar series is being held every other Wednesday, so 2 Wednesdays in February and then 2 Wednesdays in March from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. So today is our Green and Blue Careers webinar. On Wednesday, February 18th, the webinar will focus on hospitality and tourism careers. On Wednesday, March 4th, the webinar will be on helping careers, so jobs in education, human and social services. And then to round us out on Wednesday, March 25th, we will have a webinar debunking the myth on manufacturing careers. And this conversation today will also be recorded and can be accessed at a later date as well. So without further ado, it is now my pleasure to pass it over to the moderator of today's discussion, Orion Breen.
Good morning, or should I say good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us and for your interest in blue and green careers. My name is Orion Breen. I'm the new executive director of E2 Tech, the Environmental and Energy Technology Council of Maine. We do networking and educational events. And so if you are interested in learning more about energy, environment, technology, careers, encourage you to check out our website, e2tech.org. Many of our events are free for students, so it's a great way to connect with other folks who are in the industry or potential future employers. So let's kick it off with our panel. Garron, do you want to introduce yourself and Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens?
I would. Good afternoon to you all. Glad to be here and thank you for having me. My name is Garron Dorr. I work here at the beautiful spot of Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, where I basically have two jobs. One is a horticulturist, and then my main job is really a horticultural therapist. Um, that is kind of a niche market, but I do work with a multitude of different populations that early onset dementia, memory care, physically, cognitively challenged folks, some visual impairments. And what I do is I use gardens, plants and nature, garden activities to set goals and objectives through a 12-week program. I am expanding that outreach program for the fall and winters. But we use these activities to improve the physical, kind of mental, and social well-being of others to gain a little more positive impact in their lives. And I can go deeper, further details a little bit later, and I'll give a little more time to the other panelists. But thank you.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, super happy to be here too. My name is Lorren Ruscetta. I am an Island Institute fellow here on Chebeague Island in the Casco Bay, about 7 miles from Portland. where I focus mostly on all things climate resilience within municipal planning. I work for the town of Chebeague Island. And yeah, I'll get a little bit more into that in a little while, but yeah.
I think I'm next in line. My name is Chris Cary, and I work for the New England Ocean Cluster and the University of Southern Maine. Thank you, Orion and Hannah, for putting this together. I hope everyone on the other side of the screen here enjoys this session and finds it useful. The New England Ocean Cluster has focused for 10 years on supporting ocean related and ocean adjacent businesses, ventures, projects get up and started. And we take an approach where we focus on supporting kind of the entrepreneurial mindset. We've been partnered with the University of Southern Maine for the last decade. And just this past May, we launched a public-private partnership to kind of revitalize the University of Southern Maine's Office of Commercialization. So that is my new role. I am a USM employee, which is wonderful and exciting. And hopefully there are some USM students listening. And just to kind of offer some context, the term commercialization, I like to give it a definition. It's really the process of turning kind of unique ideas, research, or creative thinking into real world applications or products, services, things that we can engage with as a society that deliver both value, but also have a positive impact on kind of how we go about our lives. And so that's what we're doing today. And I'll look forward to talking more about it as the session goes on.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of Kennebec County Soil and Water Conservation District. I do quite a bit of things here since it's a one-person district mainly. So I do everything from office work to doing technical assistance, which might include GIS, or going out to landowners or to lake associations to do erosion and sediment control. We also do a lot of outreach, including the Maine Envirothon program. And I'm sure there's a lot more that we do, but at this point, that's enough to share.
And I think that leaves me. Hello, everyone. I am Samantha Bangs. I'm a researcher at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute in Portland. I work in the Fisheries Ecology Lab. So we are doing work to understand where fish move underwater, how they behave, and what sustains them, as that's critical information for fisheries management. And I'm a very proud SMCC alum of the Marine Science Program at SMCC that really laid the foundation for a career change for me and getting into this line of work. Happy to talk more about that throughout the panel.
Fantastic. So what did your college to career pathway look like? Was it a straight linear line or were there detours? Anyone can jump in.
Well, certainly for myself, and I can kind of piggyback on Samantha, is I am a later in life career change, also former SMCC alum through their horticulture department program, which is amazing. Um, and I'm always a big advocate of community college folks, so I'm hoping there's a lot of participants here about that. Um, but yeah, I had a little change of careers about 6 years ago with horticultural therapy, and which led me down to just trying to figure out what that path is in the schooling and professional certificates that I needed. Um, and so, of course, the first part is horticulture. It's part of the title. And so I did look up, I had moved here from the West Coast about 6.5, 7 years ago now. And that's where I started, was just the community college route. And that was for 2 years for an associate's. I do have a bachelor's in communication as well from prior years, but and then I went back to school. Um, with an affiliated horticultural therapy institute through Colorado State, which gave me the professional certificate as a horticultural therapist. So yeah, just kind of life sometimes takes you off a veer, a new fork in the road, and it's been a great journey. So I'm always one for education. Never stop.
Samantha, you were saying to me that you ended up going back to school after your first degree to focus on something that you were more passionate about after being out in the workforce, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I had the opportunity right out of high school to follow a music scholarship. So I took the scholarship, obviously, as one would, but it really going through that degree and working in that field, I kind of figured out what wasn't working for me. And I had been passionate about science, specifically marine science, from an early age. And it took a few years of courage and planning to make a big move career-wise. And I moved from the Midwest to the East Coast to pursue this. But for me, going the community college route was the perfect way to have the flexibility to know that there'd be a lot of support for someone coming back to school after a few years and kind of looking for that change. And specifically, the marine science program is what drew me to SMCC just because of the unique offering of that specific program. And it really gave me a good launch pad to kind of restart in a way. But the lessons I learned and the professional experience I had going to college previously really helped me be more hyper focused that second time around going through school.
Now, were people's first jobs out of college, was it in your line of work you're doing now, in the career path you chose, or was it something else, but even doing something else, you still learned something in that job that helped your career pathway?
I can kind of speak to that. So I did my undergrad at Bates College right out of high school, so I didn't take any time off. I changed my major during my undergrad, timing from physics to geoscience, which I loved. I loved that change. I also got a master's degree. I started a master's degree in 2010 and finished in 2015. So that's 5 full years later. And that was in education at the University of Southern Maine. The 5 years in between were ultimately what shaped my career path, and they had nothing to do with what I studied in my undergrad. So when I left my undergrad, I decided to follow certain aspects that made my life enjoyable or comfortable, which were my outdoor passions in surfing and snowboarding and things like that, and also my friends. So I moved to Boston and I was close to the ocean and I was close to the mountains, and I got a job in bioscience in the Boston area. And while doing that, I also reached out to some companies in the surf industry and asked if they needed help representing products in the Northeast region. And I wound up building what would ultimately become a 20-year relationship with a company called Firewire Surfboards. And they were actually the first one to give me a job that is on my career path now, which is in more of the startup and business development space. Even though I have a very like a scientific background on the academic side, what I wound up realizing and what I know now looking back in a reflective way is that what shaped my career was actually building skills that fit the lifestyle I wanted to live, not necessarily trying to set out to participate in a career I thought I liked. And I feel very lucky that that's how I arrived at the point I'm at today, because, you know, the example I was thinking about prior to this session was there may be someone on this call that wants to get into aquaculture, but if you don't want to get out on a boat and work with muddy stuff and dirty stuff and be cold and wet and have a lot of physical work requested of you, then you may want to develop a skill that lets you work in a different part of that business. I think we've arrived at a time in history where the importance of developing skills so that they support your eventual career is the most important now than I feel like it's been in a long time. So anyways, I've arrived at my career through a lot of experimentation, and I feel very fortunate that I now have a job working for the university supporting startups, where I get to use my skills, live the lifestyle I want to live, and that creates harmony for me.
What you are saying reminds me of when I was young, and the idea that who you are with can be as important as what you are doing. You can be working a job that sounds terrible, but if you have a great team of people working on it, it can be awesome. But sometimes you could be on a career path that is what you thought you wanted, but the people you're working with, you aren't feeling inspired and passionate about. And so when I look back at, my journey, thinking about, when you're young, you may not be sure what your passion is. And my advice is to find other people who are passionate about what they're doing. And, if you don't know what your dream is, help someone else with their dream. And in the process, you might discover what you are passionate about. And sometimes your passion is helping other people achieve their passion. And so I have a question for the folks listening in, and you can type it into the chat section. When we say green and blue economy, what is it that you are thinking? You came here for a reason. So when you hear green blue economy, what does it mean to you? And I would ask our panelists as well. What does green and blue economy mean to you, and how does your work fit into that space?
I can take a stab. So in terms of defining the sector, I would say that anything within the green and blue economy are activities and actions and decisions that promote sustainable development. So like green economy you might think of like energy efficiency and like renewable energy technologies and things like that, or land use decision making, like sustainable agriculture and things like that. Whereas the blue economy would speak more to ocean related uses, whether it's you're talking about aquaculture or things related to like the working waterfront and like electrification or more like Samantha's work. And in terms of my work, so Island Institute is a predominantly, I would describe it as a community development organization. And we have a lot of different strategies. And one of them is within supporting energy efficiency and transitions to renewable energy on a very small scale, like within small communities that lack capacity to make sort of decisions around transitioning to renewable energy. And then we also have a whole blue economy and working waterfront sort of strategy around that as well. And within my position, I'm really lucky because I get to support the town within their really specific municipal governance decision-making models around, we have two wharves that service the town and make sure that people can get to the island and get off of the island in emergency situations. And, both of these wharves have to be lifted as a result of sea level rise and climate change impacts. And so I've been supporting the town and making sure that they have the sort of financial access through grant writing and things like that, but also connecting with, environmental and marine infrastructure consultants that, have technical expertise within that field. And so, yeah, I kind of navigate, I would say both of those sectors, but yeah.
And if I can add just super quickly to that too, I I think definitions are really important. And as young aspirational professionals, don't ever be afraid to ask for clarification of a definition amongst peers or amongst people who maybe have more time in an industry. Sitting where I sit today, if someone is in a room and they're uncertain about something and they ask for a definition, like what does that mean? I've heard it before. The words blue and economy are pretty simple and well-known words, but when used together, even today, there's still multiple definitions for what blue economy is or ocean economy is, and different organizations look at them differently. So always seek to understand them, because much of what Lorren was saying, and I think what I've seen in the comments, are bringing in this aspect of environmentalism or environmental stewardship and responsibility. We've always adhered to the World Bank's definition of the blue economy, which references the importance of making sure something, a project, is both financially sustainable, but it's environmentally responsible and socially inclusive of the workforce local to the resource or business activity. And that last one's interesting because, what does that mean? Well, it means something like, if there's a fishing company that's super environmentally responsible, but they go to the Arctic and they take a large portion of the quota of a fishery from Arctic waters, and then they bring it back to their own country and don't leave much for those local to that resource, then those populations can be disadvantaged. So you've heard the term triple bottom line. Blue economy to us has always been very much rooted in that people, planet, profit concept. But definitely make sure you ask about things, because they're not always, shared ubiquitous definitions.
Yeah, there are no bad questions. When I was, we first start out in any workplace, the acronyms are your enemy. Everybody just says, "Oh yeah, our fourth quarter LPOs are lower than we want," and you're like, "What's an LPO?" So definitely don't be afraid to ask, like, "What do you mean by all this stuff?" And it's uh, yeah, definitely the enemy of the acronym, and asking for definitions and asking for clarity when people talking. It's way better to ask for clarity up front than to go off on a track you weren't supposed to because you didn't ask for clarity to begin with. What are the programs, issues, solutions that some of you folks on the panel are currently working on? Stephanie, I think you said that, you guys are working with erosion and sediment control issues with the lake associations, and Lorren, you're working on comprehensive plans around climate resilience at the municipal level. Yeah, they're interesting projects you guys are working on.
A lot of times we work directly with watershed groups to do 319 grants, which are AKA implementation grants, or 604B grant, which is more of a planning grant. So what that means is there are planning processes that are involved before you can get the implementation grant. You get the 604B by getting a watershed or building a watershed management plan. And then once you get that in place, you can do the implementation grant, which is providing pretty much erosion and sediment control to the landowners around the lakes. So there are grant funding programs that can help the owners put in buffer plantings, put in infiltration steps, things like that. So our work has been a lot about that lately. And it's great because we know we're actually working directly with the water quality, helping with the phosphorus load, and then also beautifying at the same time, because these buffer plantings are much better than grass going right up into the lakeside. So that's been a focus of ours for at least a couple of years.
And ours as well here at the Botanical Gardens. It is very ecological, sustainable practices. Big focus now is changing to native plantings to kind of follow along on what you were saying. Taking into account, climate change, water retention, so on and so forth. It's definitely a big push right now on the educational side for us to teach everyday gardeners, horticulturists, those practices.
Yeah, I would just say really quickly, similarly to what Stephanie and Garron were just saying, a cool thing I've been working on recently is collaborating with a shore core steward which is a program as part of the Maine Conservation Corps. She's a very new college graduate who received a ton of training with the Maine Department of Environmental Protection related to erosion management and nature-based strategies, and kind of similar to what Stephanie was just saying, trying to work with property owners to make sure that folks are educated on what kinds of plantings are most appropriate for like coastal bluff stability and things like that. And so, working directly with her and bringing sort of creating the environment that she's allowed to kind of come to the island and work directly with property owners and engage in some site visits to really deliver some solid science communication and recommendations to people that, want to do the right thing, but just like don't know exactly what to do. And they're watching their neighbors engage in all different kinds of behaviors for shoreline stabilization. And so, yeah, that's something else that I've been working on a lot right now, too.
And I can jump into and offer. Oh, Samantha, were you about to go?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I'll be quick. What working with early stage companies is tricky when the world is changing fast. And the reason that's tricky is because an early stage company probably doesn't have the revenues or profits to sustain a lot of volatility yet. And in addition to that, they've also likely gone after grant funds, what they call more public funds to support their early stage growth and research. And so with both COVID and changes in administration, the landscape has moved quickly. And so what we're working on as part of the Office of Commercialization is creating pathways that early stage companies can plug into to receive, catered support to meet the needs of where they're at. And without going into too much technical detail, it's a really welcome service, and lots of folks in the economic development space in the state of Maine do really wonderful work supporting companies of multiple industries in these kind of early vulnerable stages. And I think that's an important job for a lot of organizations to continue with.
I did want to add that similar to Chris's point, I'd say 6 months ago, maybe more like 9 months ago, would have considered some of our work in blue economy, but because of changes federally, we've had offshore wind work paused. Some aspects of it have been canceled. Some have just been paused. But the work we were working on wasn't necessarily, I didn't think it as part of an economical measure, but we were definitely working on an ecological level, tracking changing ocean conditions, temperature, fish distribution, and abundance, specifically out at those proposed offshore wind sites. So we've had to, whether we like it or not, maintain a good amount of flexibility with the blue economy work that we've been doing, and kind of pivot to now we have data that we've collected. What can we do with what we have so far? And kind of how can we forecast forward even with uncertainty? So that's been a new skill I didn't expect to learn so quickly.
I have a question in the audience of, the idea of the blue economy and what it means and the definitions and values and how it changes over time. It's an interesting question, and I can talk about it from the idea of the green economy, where you think about, most people might think about renewable energy, but it is often a term starts off in a certain smaller circle, and then as it gains popularity and awareness, which is great, bring attention to that, the definition can widen or change, or can even morph, or even have backlash where, you have the idea of greenwashing, where companies who other folks don't really think are green, other people feel like they're pretending to be green. And so that providing clarity around, if you say, you're organic, well, there's organic certified by the USDA, and there's organic that's done on an industrial scale versus local farming, sustainable practice locally. And so being, specific and beyond just saying it's great, I think, to use words like blue economy, green economy, but being specific about what's your niche corner of it and what other values do you apply to it, be it, social justice, environmental justice, or other, as was mentioned before, people, planet, profit focus. So yeah, any thoughts on how you might have seen definitions or values change over time in your industries?
I the kind of maybe vignette that I would offer is in line with what you're saying, Orion, in the sense that um, I think outside of the authenticators that you mentioned, like USDA organic, there's very strict rules that you have to follow, and there's almost enforcement. If you don't follow those rules, you're no longer USDA organic. I don't know if the definitions have changed so much, but it's the challenge with words like blue economy and green economy is there is no standard enforcement and there is no standard definition. There's just a handful of organizations that kind of try to promote their own either definition or adherence to that kind of norm. And when you have things like greenwashing, you have a company that says they're environmentally responsible in this way, but to the outside observer, maybe they're really not, right, in their practices. And so it becomes tricky because it ultimately, at least in the product space, is really up to you, the consumer, to do the work to determine whether a company is doing a good job, an honest job, and a transparent job in adhering to the values of these kind of societal definitions. And I think it's really hard to have a societal definition that everyone is able to adhere to and never waver. There may be a financial decision that a company has to make that has all the best values in the world, but it's not the perfect environmental decision. And it becomes really tricky to do the right thing and then to be an informed consumer when it's always moving around. The landscape's always moving.
In some ways, the broader definition of idea like blue economy, green economy can be good in that solidarity can be good. And, when you live in a state of Maine, like Maine, in some ways, everybody should be. Is it bad if everybody feels part of the blue and green economy? And that, we're all interconnected and, our farmers, forestry, fishing, research and development, our universities, they're trying to, they're all interconnected. And so that brings me to the question of, you know, who do you typically collaborate in your work? And what does the collaborations look like? We chatted about, the people you work with being very important. And we chatted about, even if you aren't somebody who wants to be out on a boat, you can still have jobs in the industry that supports them. But you may also be working with youth, if you love working with youth, or you could be working with policymakers, and you may not be working directly with the guy in the boat, but you're working with a policymaker or to get funding that would then support the guy on the boat. So yeah, interested to hear who do you collaborate with, and what does that collaboration look like?
I can share. I was just mentioning earlier that I've been working a lot with some marine infrastructure engineers related to our wharf project. So I work a lot with those folks. But I also do a lot of work on island with just everyone who lives here because there's a lot of local knowledge. I'm relatively new to Maine. I just moved in September. And so I rely a lot on those around me who, lobstermen that have been going out on the water for their whole lives and before them, their parents and things like that. And so I really, yeah, I look to everyone else around me for that support too. But I work a lot with actually GMRI, where Samantha works. There's someone else that lives on the island that we've been collaborating a lot on some community events to educate some folks on GMRI's coastal community flooding data collection work, which Chebeague Island is one of those spots that they're asking for data from, which is really cool. And then I work a lot with some of the regional planning agencies because I've been doing a lot with the town's comprehensive plan, which means that I need a lot of regional data that I don't have access to. So yeah, reaching out to like the Greater Portland Council of Governments, those lovely folks, and yeah, checking in with them about things that they have access to, and then also the youth on the island because I'm writing a document that speaks to 30, 40 years in the future and living on an island that folks are worried about the sort of longevity of the year-round population. The youngsters here are super, super important to that work. And so I work a lot with them to ask them what is important to them about living here and what they want to see for their future. So, yeah.
What skills have been most valuable in helping you succeed early in your careers? I mean, it could be technical, it could be soft skills. And rephrase that, what did you learn later that you wish you knew in college or earlier in your career?
I would say that for me, gaining real workforce experience during um, my schooling and whatever degree program I was in at the time um, really helped kind of fast track um, the career path that I had, um, and just really being not being afraid to uh, ask instructors for more. If you identify an instructor that you have that you know you want to work, you'd like to work with them, maybe you want to learn more about their expertise, there's no harm in asking and kind of being proactive and asking for more from instructors led me to get internships, and then those internships led to connections that I continue to sustain and grew into a full-time position eventually. So just if you see a skill or an expertise in an instructor that you have during college, there's no reason that they can't help propel you into the future as well.
Yeah, and to tap in on that, I do, if there's job fairs, any sort of networking situation, usually there is some sort of, like you said, internship or job placement, whatever they use as a title. Yeah, get your feet in there, get to know people. Eventually, it's just going to avalanche into more wealth and more opportunities for you. Definitely, networking is a huge aspect, and be organized as to kind of think about what direction you're heading into, and the steps that it takes to get there. Those right classes, those connections, the appropriate organizations. Um, yeah, networking is a big point of sale in my book.
And I'll come at it. I agree with everything that's been said thus far, and I'm going to come at it from maybe a bit higher perspective, like high level perspective, less specific. The thing that I realized I started to pay more attention to was being efficient with my time, because no matter how you select it, as you get older, things come for your time once you get out of school, whether it's a career or a necessity to work somewhere or having a family or buying a house and needing to do certain things with that, whatever, life comes for your time. So be organized and be efficient and thoughtful with how you use your time. Get really good at self-educating, because when we talk about networking, if you go to a networking event and you didn't do any self-educating prior to that networking event, it'll be a lot harder to have meaningful conversations with the experts or the professionals in that field. So, take it on yourself to learn on your own with the time that you're using efficiently. And then the last thing I would say is be really, really careful with, unless your career is this, be really careful, and this gets at time, how technology makes its way into your life. It can cause you to not develop the skills that you need to have as a person. So what I mean by that is invest in just talking to people. Practice making eye contact with your friends or your family or your teachers, people that you're comfortable with. Because if you become someone who manages their time well, invest in skills and identify goals and get after those and get really good at talking to people, you will have a productive career and you'll be capable of navigating the path that's in front of you. I think better. That's my personal.
Yeah, I think, yeah, go.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna quickly to agree with Chris's point. I'm also a career changer. I was a therapist for almost 10 years before going back to school. And while I learned lots of very important things in my marine policy degree that I just graduated from, so much of the skills that I use on a daily basis just come from things that I learned while I was a therapist and talking to people and being able to connect with them and get on that like same page. So yeah, the work that you do to become a person that is comfortable interacting with other people and connecting with them will get you very, very far in your career.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. The idea of what was said before, the idea of networking and the idea of being present. Um, what is networking? And the idea of, he wants to efficiently use your time. I would say the efficient use of your time is no matter where you are, be open to where you are and what you have to learn from it. Because as folks have said, they may have gone off on a different path and ended up somewhere else or went back to school or had a career change. But like, no matter where you are, there's something to learn from people around you, and potentially both positive and negative. You can learn from people uh, who are making mistakes so you don't have to make them, and you can learn from people who have been successful as well. Um, and that's, when I was in college, I was told, oh, you should be networking, but no one really told me, well, what does that mean? And it is like, instead of being on your phone, talk to the person on the bus next to you or waiting in line next to you, have a genuine curiosity and interest in people, and ask questions, and you will make friends or connections and find out things that will help you along your career path. And there is also a role for technology as well. When I meet someone at an event, I'll get their name and then I will try to make an effort to connect with them on LinkedIn later. And you can say, it was great to see you at this event. And so place like LinkedIn is a good place to put your resume, work experience, and connect with people. And kind of reinforcing what Samantha said, the idea of, asking questions of your teachers, this idea of mentors. I had a friend who, I went to film school actually. I didn't study energy environment. I studied storytelling and movies. And my friend, and then I ended up here at the Environment and Energy Technology Council of Maine. So the idea of in all your jobs, communication is key and important, and being able to connect with others and tell stories. It doesn't matter what your job is, processing information and putting yourself in other people's shoes to understand that they might not process information the same way you do or have the same priors. So who your audience is, it isn't just about what you want to say. You have to think about, how can I say it in a way that they will hear me? So one of my friends, give an example. There was a director, Alexander Payne, who had an indie movie, and he wrote the director and talked about how he really liked that film. And then that director offered him a job to work with him. So when you have old, people have been in the industry for a while, they actually love talking to young people who are excited or interested in what they're doing. And so there's another comment in the chat saying, do blue-green economies need more people? And the answer is yes. There's tremendous opportunities for growth in the blue and green economies. I say, there can be challenges. We're in a turbulent time right now with, regulations and funding being shifted around, but there's still tremendous opportunities in the blue and green economy. And so there's a question about, do blue and green economies need more people? And if so, why and what are some ways education about blue jobs are being taught to youth in all your work? Does anybody want to take that on?
At the institutional level, there's always, and actually, Lorren, you might know some of the programs better than I, but there's all kinds of programs that are designed to create work experiences, whether it's in aquaculture and commercial fishing. And Samantha, I know GMRI has been a big part of these, and so I think if you look internal to your college or university or your school system, wherever you're studying as students, there are often pathways that would connect you to various facets in the blue, various facets of the blue and green spaces. There's always internship experiences in my observation.
Yes, I'll hop in. Every summer, GMRI hosts usually between 6 and 8 REU interns. So that's a research experience for undergraduates. It's a federal program. And we do still have funding for that program. And I believe it's a nationwide program. There's opportunities all across the country, specifically for research. Usually it's like biology, chemistry students that are looking into those experiences. But that was, I was able to get one of those REU internships, and that was a big step forward for me.
Internships are big. There's lots of ways to gain hands-on experience before or after graduation. And I know some folks on the panel have had internships. Interested to hear, what made those experiences impactful for you. I think, Stephanie, you did some internships that were impactful.
Yeah. Well, first, I have a similar story to everybody else. I went to SMCC first. I started in the horticulture program, knowing I would go into the environmental science career field. And during COVID, my horticulture placement was pushed back. So I said, oh, look, marine science actually has a lot of the same, chemistry, biology that I can also transfer to USM. So I dual enrolled. And during my dual enrollment, I did the marine science capstone project. And I decided to do that as analyzing microfibers or microplastics in wastewater. So because I was able to communicate with the municipality of South Portland and get in that way, they're like, oh, hey, we have some internship roles. And I had never considered it before. But due to my marine science capstone project, I was like, yeah, okay. So right before my transferring into my bachelor's program, I interned for the city of South Portland in their stormwater program. And I liked working for them so much that I actually did another 6 months in the sustainability department. And then I was able to continue on with them for stormwater for 2 more 6-month stints, because you could only work for that area for 6 months at a time or any given year. And yeah, that was one of the most important internships ever. I learned how to use GIS there. I did a lot of water analyzing. We'd go out and collect samples for the Maine healthy beaches. We collected samples in the streams, worked with the DEP a lot. So already I was networking without even knowing it, because we were connecting with all these other organizations. Stormwater is quite big. So especially in this Cumberland area where you have the MS4 permits and a lot of requirements and a lot of people involved. So yeah, that was the internship that helped me the most. But also while doing that, I still did a bunch of other things. I didn't just stop there. I worked at other places to intern as well. And I think just having those different connections, like Stewards of Maine, Presumpscot Regional Land Trust, just having your foot in the door in a lot of different ways also helps with networking, because then you end up running into them later and they're like, oh, you're working there now, and you just know everybody, and it's great to do as much as possible while you're still in school.
And
Yeah, if you were, go,
and I
Chris.
was just going to say, like, internships are almost like free trials. They're a little bit lower pressure than trying to apply for a job. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to stick with this forever. It's a great way to get your experience in an industry and to see if you like it, and then to identify skills that you might want to sharpen. And I think Stephanie brings up a great point that I would say, think about this, have it contribute to your definition of networking. A lot of us get cold sweats thinking about having to go onto a conference floor and talk to hundreds of people. And networking is always this big extroverted personality type, experience, when it can also be the exact opposite, where it's one-to-one. And I think you mentioned it, Orion. Send a message to someone that you want to learn from, and it's a one-to-one coffee or lunch. That's networking too. And you get that out of internships. You can learn from people in a one-on-one session.
So yeah, we're getting close to the end, and so please continue to put your questions into the chat or the Q&A feature while folks are doing that. If you could give one piece of advice to a student or recent graduate interested in entering this field, what would it be? Stephanie, you want to go first?
I kind of already said some of it, because I
Yeah.
really do think that branching out is really important. I held 3 different positions during the semester. I took organic chemistry, which was very difficult. So I was working every other weekend for one of them. But I managed, and I'm in my 40s. So if I can manage, I think pretty much anyone can manage. And I appreciated that, because you're really working hard, but you're also, again, getting to know a lot of different people, getting to know a lot of different roles, finding out what you like. Like Chris said, you don't have to go with that field just because you've interned there. It's a good way to open up and say, hey, well, is this for me? No? Okay, let's go this direction. And doing that as early as possible is the best, because then you have the timeline where you can say, yeah, next year I'll try this. And if that works, you might be doing that for the last 2 years of your college education. And then you'll have 2 years of experience right off the bat, which looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess going off of that too, I would just say not to be afraid to pivot. Like if something you're doing is cool, but you learn of something else that is really up your alley and you want to take a risk and try it out, like it's okay to try a bunch of different things and to figure out what is for you and what you want. And yeah, I love a pivot. I think it's good. I think everyone should try whatever they want to do in their life. So yeah.
I just want to echo what Lorren and Stephanie have already said. Don't be afraid to pivot. I think everyone on this panel has pivoted, and you've got to learn what you like, but also what you don't like. And the only way to do that is to try things out. So don't be afraid.
I consider the field that I'm in so interdisciplinary that it's hard to give one piece of advice for one specific space. But I think, and I think it goes in tandem with what everyone has said thus far. Evolutionarily, I think we're designed as humans to grow based on hard work and stress. Like if you exercise, you get stronger. If you lift weights, you get stronger. So challenge yourself and don't be afraid to take a risk. I think that those things really help with our growth as professionals. If you keep it really comfortable, you won't know what you're capable of or what certain experiences could be. So similar to changing and pivoting, don't be afraid to take a jump, because you can change and pivot as an insurance, right? So if you have an opportunity in Alaska and you've never done anything like that, working on a salmon boat or something like that, don't not take it because you haven't done it. Don't be afraid to take that risk. Challenge yourself, be ready to grow, and kind of embrace that mindset that you can always pivot.
So we got a question about internships. Are they paid? And fortunately, yes, most internships now are paid. Your school, most schools have great internship programs who are connected with great employers. E2 Tech has an intern that just started last week. We're excited to have them, and they are paid. And yeah, it's definitely, if your internship is not paid, it's a potential red flag to me. But I also would say volunteering with organizations is also a great way to gain experience and connections that could lead to future employment. There's a lot of great nonprofit organizations, and they're in the energy environment space. When I was working, a job, and the job was okay, but I'm like, it's not really what I love. I started a podcast and interviewed people who were doing the stuff that I was more interested in doing. And that helped introduce me to new people and understand more of that area. So, there's really is just, yeah, get involved with people who are doing cool stuff. Yes, you got to pay the bills. That's important. But you can still save the world on nights and weekends and build your career that way as well.
And I'd also say, especially for the green industry right now, I know to speak for the gardens here is a lot of the internships are now out there in the world due to scheduling of college courses and whatnot. Is the nurseries, the botanical gardens, they're all starting to put their internships out. I've started one for hort therapy. So t the kind of the time is now to start looking for those um, around.
All right, we have some questions in the Q&A. One was asking about uh, opportunities in your organizations involving undergraduates and recent grads. Another one was about horticulture therapy, and is there an opportunity for this to be applied to residential land care?
I'll oh, I'll just share really quickly about the recent grads question. The Island Institute Fellowship, which is a role that I currently have, is actually a role that's geared solely to recent grads, whether it's associates, bachelor's, or master's degree graduates. And so it is, you have to be a graduate within the last 5 years. And so there are tons and tons of opportunities similar to that one. Island Institute is just one place that has that kind of fellowship. But there's lots of places that love opportunities to work with new graduates because there's lots of energy and lots of enthusiasm. And yeah, so absolutely there's space for you guys.
And I was actually in AmeriCorps after college, where you can serve in the community. And I'm on the board of the Maine Volunteer Foundation, and Maine has its own version called Maine Service Fellows. So if you're interested in working in communities like the Island Institute Fellowship, but in other places across the state, definitely check out AmeriCorps as a great after college experience to connect with communities and nonprofits and get work experience and work on stuff that people are passionate about.
I just ran into somebody that I worked with through the AmeriCorps when they were working for Maine DEP, and now they are working full time for 30 Mile Association, or I think that's their name. And I'm like, oh, great. So it works in helping find a job for sure.
So yeah, folks have continued questions. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in E2 Tech, you can find me at our website. If and Educate Maine has great resources who helped organize this. And if you want to connect with one of the panelists, feel free to reach out to them if you don't see us on LinkedIn or on our websites. We love talking to young people who are interested in blue and green careers. Hannah, do you have any final words?
No, just want to say thank you to you, Orion, and everybody on the panel for such helpful insight, a mix of very practical advice and encouraging and hopeful stories for the future. Thank you for everyone that attended. Please reach out to myself, your contact at your school, or any one of these wonderful individuals to learn more about their work or their organizations. But thank you so much for everyone who attended, and hope you have a great rest of your day.